Hello, everyone, and welcome to 70 Years, 70 Muppets, a Muppet fan podcast presented by ToughPigs.com. This is the podcast where we celebrate the Muppets' 70th anniversary with 70 straight weeks of spotlights on our favorite Muppet characters. I am this week's host, Anthony Strand, and the Muppet of the Week is Fozzie Bear. Designed by Michael K. Frith, built by Bonnie Erickson, and originally performed by Frank Oz, performed today by Eric Jacobson. Fozzie made his world debut in 1976. I am thrilled to be joined today by a man who knows a thing or two about doing comedy on stage, Noah Diamond. Thank you so much for joining me, Noah.
Thank you for having me, Anthony. It's a pleasure to talk to you about this very important subject.
I think Fozzie Bear is an important subject. I agree. The reason I thought of you for this episode immediately is because, tell me if you disagree, I think of Fozzie Bear as a vaudeville comedian. And I think of you as an expert on vaudeville. When I think of that, I think of Noah Diamond immediately. And why would I think of that? Noah, tell us a little bit about your work.
Well, I think, first of all, it's very flattering to be associated with vaudeville. I think if you do associate me with it, it's probably because of my connection to the Marx Brothers, first and foremost. Yeah. I have a long history of talking and writing about the Marx Brothers, playing Groucho on stage on many occasions. And I also co-host a Marx Brothers podcast that you have been a guest on.
And I was honored to do so. That's true. The Marx Brothers Council, we should say the title.
The Marx Brothers Council podcast.
Love it. So what exactly is vaudeville?
Well, that's a great question, Anthony. And it's a beautiful word with many layers of meaning. But I think for our purposes, we can focus in on two meanings of the word vaudeville. First, it is the mainstream of American popular entertainment from the late 19th century through roughly the 1930s. And it takes place on circuits, which consist of theaters in almost every town in the United States, no matter how small. In an age before mass media, when the newspaper was really the only form of mass media that was accessible to everybody, going to the theater and seeing this kind of variety entertainment was the main way to get culture, the main way to hear music and to see comedy, to see drama, as well as all kinds of novelty, animal acts and jugglers. And that's what vaudeville was, one act after another. And these acts would be arranged on a bill with an eye toward variety, a comedian and then a singer and then a novelty act and then an animal act and then another comedian. But other than variety, there would never be any other governing logic behind a vaudeville show. No storyline, no thematic link among the acts, and usually not even a narrator or an MC, just act, act, act. And vaudeville thrived as the main American form of entertainment pretty much up until mass media, until sound comes to movies, movies become affordable and ubiquitous. Pretty soon homes have phonographs in them and radios and eventually televisions, and you can turn on a switch and get vaudeville anytime, essentially. And it came and went very quickly. So that's vaudeville, the culture of vaudeville on the circuits as an industry in the United States from the late 19th century and really gone by World War II. And then the word also refers to a style of performance that emerged from vaudeville culture, which is a very Muppet style, a very presentational
Right, that's the thing.
Song and dance, telling jokes, a kind of working entertainer's approach to go out there and please the crowd. You could say the vaudevillian approach is a more commercial than artistic approach to entertainment.
Sure, it's just anything to get a laugh, anything to give the crowd their money's worth, right? That sort of thing.
Yeah, well, certainly an emphasis on crowd pleasing, but vaudeville was a relatively refined form. There are other forms of variety entertainment emerging at the same time, one of which is burlesque. Burlesque develops in parallel with vaudeville on its own circuits or wheels, as they were called. And burlesque, which also spawned a lot of great comedians, is a much rougher, women and children not admitted, saloon kind of variety entertainment. Also, minstrel shows were coming up at the same time as the early days
Right.
of
Yeah.
vaudeville. Vaudeville was family friendly, and that was part of its commercial prominence, during the age of its prominence, is that anyone could see a vaudeville show. And they were very
Just
strict.
like the Muppet Show.
Like the Muppet Show, yeah. Right. Not explicitly for kids, but not inappropriate for them.
Sure. Yeah. So the question of the day, our Muppet of the week is Fozzie.
Yeah.
Is what Fozzie does on the Muppet Show in that vaudeville tradition? Because I've always thought of it that way. What are your thoughts?
I think the answer is yes. I think there are two answers, and they're both yes. Yes, he certainly is. I mean, his whole approach to comedy is essentially vaudevillian. It's kind of pre-stand-up. There are monologists in vaudeville who got up and did comedy monologues. They weren't called stand-up comics yet, and they didn't do the kind of personal narrative that we now associate with a stand-up comedian. It was much closer to what Fozzie does, which is telling jokes.
Sure.
The comic who came out of vaudeville who Fozzie maybe is the most reminiscent of would be Milton Berle.
Right, who Fozzie worked with.
Yes, he did
on the Muppet
indeed.
Show.
Yeah, to very good effect.
Yeah.
I mean, like Fozzie, Milton Berle was a kind of lovably awkward and clumsy. He was large, and I'm not making the most obvious Milton Berle joke in the world here. I mean, he was a physically big guy with a large
Right.
presence on stage, and he always felt a little bit put upon. He also had that strange combination of insecurity and extreme confidence that so many comedians have. So yes, however, it's true pretty much across the board on the Muppet Show. I mean, the Muppet Show itself is very much a vaudeville setting, a vaudeville theater, and really a vaudeville show. So Fozzie is in the vaudeville tradition, but so is Gonzo and Lou Zealand, and an awful lot of what was on the Muppet Show.
Right.
Then there's also this other answer to the question, because there's another vaudeville tradition that you could say Fozzie participates in, which is the idea of the bad act. And I think whether Fozzie is really a bad comedian or not is a more complicated question than people might realize. But certainly in the context of the show, he's talked about and presented as a bad comic. And one of the things that makes him lovable is that he keeps trying so hard, even though he's pretty much always rejected when he goes out and tries to do comedy. And, vaudeville did have that, these acts that were known for being bad and sort of capitalized on it. The Cherry Sisters are probably the most famous, bad singers who the audiences would go in order to, well, we would now call it hate watching. They would throw
yeah.
vegetables at them. And the Cherry Sisters had to perform behind a net sometimes because the projectiles would be, that's what you did when you saw the Cherry Sisters.
I love that.
Yeah. And so in a way, Fozzie is that. He is abused by the audience regularly, especially Statler and Waldorf. On the other hand, as we know, Fozzie Bear is funny. He's hilariously funny, especially when he's not doing his act.
Yeah, that's it. That is an interesting paradox, that the least funny thing about Fozzie is when he's doing comedy.
Kind of, yeah.
And when he's just backstage trying his hardest to please Kermit or whatever, to prove that he can do the thing, that's when he's funny.
Yeah, in a way, Fozzie is a classic second banana to Kermit. And the Fozzie-Kermit dynamic has a lot to do with who Fozzie is, and the way Fozzie loves Kermit is just so lovely. And but usually a second banana's job is to feed the top banana to play straight man. And that's not quite the way the Fozzie and Kermit relationship works. They're actually more like the Marx Brothers in that they sort of alternate playing straight man to one another.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't think of Kermit as a comedy character as much as we do Fozzie.
Right.
I think, although Kermit certainly is capable of being very funny. And, I mean, the two names that you haven't said in that are Frank Oz and Jim Henson.
Yeah.
Right? And the thing is, Frank Oz and Jim Henson are one of the great comedy duos. I mean, you put them together as almost any combination of characters, and you are almost all of the time going to get a very funny scene. There's great Ralph and Sam the Eagle moments on the Muppet Show or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
You could do any combo. And Kermit and Fozzie are probably, there's Kermit and Piggy, Ernie and Bert,
Yeah.
Kermit and Fozzie, who are all such different dynamics from one another. And I think that's what's interesting about Fozzie is in the same episode, Frank Oz might be playing Miss Piggy interacting with Kermit.
Oh, yeah, I know, absolutely.
Where Miss Piggy's very much the dominant force in that relationship. And Fozzie is like terrified by the idea that he might be or something, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Piggy and Fozzie both have this consuming love for Kermit, by which they define themselves largely. Obviously, it operates very differently, in no small part because Kermit's response is so different. Although Kermit is mildly annoyed by both of them all the time.
That's correct. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk about, I think, the great Kermit and Fozzie sketch. I asked you to watch Good Grief, the Comedian.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you'd seen before. It's one of the
Sure.
classics.
Absolutely.
I guess the question I want to ask you about it specifically is, I don't know if this is a dumb question. Feel free to tell me if it is, Noah. Good Grief, the Comedian's a Bear. Why does it work as well as it does? This pairing of these two characters.
Yeah, no, that's not a stupid question. It's just a difficult one to answer. Yeah, why is that so funny?
For listeners who might not know, this is where Fozzie asks Kermit to impromptu join him in his act. And all Kermit is supposed to do is say, when Fozzie says here, Kermit's supposed to rush up and say, Good Grief, the Comedian's a Bear. And Fozzie keeps accidentally saying here before the cue. And Kermit gets increasingly mad, leading up to the dumb punchline, I passed a bunch of Muppet fans when suddenly I hear, Good Grief, the Comedian's a Bear. No, he's a not. He's a wearing a necktie.
Yeah.
Not a good joke.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that's funny about it. And I have to tell you, Anthony, I was hoping that when we started this conversation, you were going to say something like, thanks for being here. And I was going to say, good grief, the comedian's a bear.
We should have done it.
But yes, I think the cold answer to your question is, why is it funny? Rhythm and repetition. That's the mechanical answer.
Yeah.
We know that there's going to be a cue and that Kermit's going to have to say this line. He keeps saying it with great enthusiasm at what turn out to be the wrong moments. He is just frustratedly trying to follow Fozzie's not very good instructions. Kermit is kind of Lou Costello to Fozzie's Bud Abbott in that dynamic. Kermit's just trying to understand, just trying to follow the rules, but he's living in a crazy world of Fozzie's creation. So that's part of it. And we hear Kermit come out and belt that line out, to the back of the house several times. And then another thing that's funny about it is the way the comedy is so broken down right from the beginning. Like if you're performing comedy in front of an audience, you should never, the audience should never hear you tell someone, okay, when I say this, you say that,
Right. They shouldn't know the setup.
Yeah, it's so nakedly amateur right from the beginning. And then
that's true.
Yeah. And then something about mangling a joke to the point where it can't possibly be funny anymore. So by the time you get to what the joke really is, it's like it's a groaner, but it's sort of hilarious that we've worked so hard and come so far for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, Abbott and Costello seem to be on my mind tonight, but the Jonah and the Whale sketch that Abbott and Costello do.
Sure, yeah, where Lou is trying to tell the story and Bud keeps interrupting him to be like, you're not telling that story. Yeah.
Yeah, it has a similar principle. It's like,
that's true.
Somebody trying to do a joke and someone else getting in the way. And this person is so determined to do the joke, whether it's funny or not, that by the time they finally get to the punchline, it's sort of it's an anti-joke at that point, and it becomes funny that it's not funny.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I asked you to watch was Fozzie and Scooter singing Randy Newman's Simon Smith and His Amazing Dancing Bear.
Yeah.
A song that is not, I mean, the original Randy Newman song is kind of about vaudeville anyway, right? It's this act, a guy and his dancing bear. On the Muppet Show, they turned it into this full-fledged production number with Scooter and Fozzie like as you said, the natural environment of the Muppet Show is vaudeville. It's not just Fozzie doing comedy. This is not really a comedic number. It's just Scooter and Fozzie doing a song, and it's supposed to be weird that there's a bear in the song. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
come to the theater to see a bear. Well, on the Muppet Show, you can always see a bear, so it's not even strange. But I think it speaks to the, like you say, the natural vaudeville setting of the show, that we're gonna like pretend everything is weird. When everything is weird, nothing really is, but they have to keep presenting it as though it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's the spirit of vaudeville, you know?
Yeah. Yes, very much so. Yes, I mean, I love Fozzie in that mode. Fozzie as a song and dance man. It has a very specific quality, very different from Kermit as a song and dance man, which I also love. You know, when Kermit sings and dances, because we're under the spell of the Muppets and the reality that they created so beautifully, we absolutely buy that Kermit is Fred Astaire, even if we can't see his feet, you know. Kermit just seems like when Kermit is singing and dancing, you just think, oh, well, that's the way you sing and dance. Like, that's perfect. That couldn't be better. Fozzie is more like the way I sing and dance, the way we all sing and dance. He's beautifully free of inhibition, but he's foolish. You know, he's foolish and he's clumsy, and he's enthusiastic. You know, the way after a musical number, a Muppet. This is really mostly on the Muppet Show I'm talking about. After a musical number, you get to the end of the song, the big chord, the audience applauds, and all the Muppets look at each other with their mouths wide open and nod. Like, that's the after the song, like, nodding and smiling. But Fozzie does that. Fozzie's nodding and smiling after the song is more beautiful than anyone's. Ralph gives him a run for his money, though. Both of those Muppets.
That's true. Yeah. I think Fozzie is relieved that he made it. I think that's Fozzie's default mode after a song.
Yeah, right. And during a song, too. I mean, Fozzie, you know, he makes mistakes and he sort of hopes maybe they didn't see that. But of course they saw that, you know.
Right. And that's another one that I asked you to watch was Once in Love with Amy, which, had you seen this one before?
You know, I think I had, but it wasn't fresh on my mind.
So what are your thoughts watching it this time?
Well, it's exactly what I was just saying. It's another good example of that. Fozzie's trying to kind of fake his way through a musical number. You know, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's pulled on stage at the last minute. You know, it's like I guess what it is that because Fozzie is so regularly humiliated when he performs his comedy act, it's so beautifully touching that it doesn't diminish his eagerness to get out on stage. You know, you would think with what Fozzie has been through, he's the last guy in the world who would want to go out and do a number that he's not prepared for. You know, I mean, I live in fear of that, you know, like send me out there with a million backup plans for everything that could go wrong and I will appear relaxed and spontaneous, you know. Fozzie doesn't care. He goes before the firing squad, you know, every night, not only willingly, but happily. So yes, he's trying to follow Pops. Every time Pops sings the main title refrain of the song, Fozzie has to echo it, Amy, you know. Not helpful. You're not singing the song with Pops at all.
Right. One of the other things that I had you watch, which is another song, is Kermit and Fozzie and some other characters singing Any Old Iron.
Yeah.
Which is, you hear a lot about how the Muppets are doing British music hall.
Right.
And I don't know enough about British music hall, and I don't know if you do either, to know how different it is from vaudeville, because that just feels like a vaudeville number to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. I think they are. It's largely the same thing. I'm not an expert in British music hall, but I think if you and I could take a DeLorean to 1910 and see an American vaudeville show, and then go across the ocean and see a British music hall show, I think we would feel like we were basically seeing the same kind of thing. It would be different in the same way that British comedy is different from American comedy,
Right. Sure.
but the same kind of variety presentation.
Right. That's the impression I get. Man, wouldn't that be fun? Like, now that you've said it, what a delight that would be.
It's also interesting. The Muppet Show has this British strain running through it because it was filmed in Britain, and every episode has the little UK piece that wasn't shown here. And
right, and that's one.
Yeah.
Of
that makes sense.
The Any Old Iron is a UK spot. Yeah. But what I love about that song is how Kermit and Fozzie are singing. Kermit has a verse first, then Fozzie has a verse. Fozzie's verse is about his wedding. And they're just both so enthusiastic. The pace gets faster as it goes along. They're having such a good time. That's one where Fozzie doesn't mess up the song.
Right.
But still that like basic Fozzie childlike enthusiasm shines through.
Yeah.
Because there are no errors.
Yeah, absolutely right. Also, I mean, Kermit is with him. I mean, I think Fozzie gets a lot of confidence from Kermit. And I mean, their friendship is so beautiful. I think it's partly physical, the way the two characters look together, their relative sizes, and also the various approaches to puppetry, the way their hands work differently from each other. When Fozzie like puts his hands on Kermit's shoulders and stands behind him, as he often does, and Fozzie seems to be both hiding behind Kermit and like 3 times Kermit's size. It's just it's very winning,
yeah.
And lovely. And Kermit's authority comes from the admiration that the other characters have for him, mainly Fozzie. Because Kermit is not really an alpha in terms of his personality. He just has it, in the showbiz sense, and he's a leader, and everyone wants to follow him.
And speaking of which, the last clip that I had you watch is the scene from the Muppet movie where Kermit and Fozzie meet for the first time.
Yeah.
Where Fozzie is doing his act at the El Slizo Cafe.
Right.
And then Kermit joins him on stage, and suddenly the audience will turn on Fozzie again by the end of that number. But for a moment, when Kermit and him dance together, that's when he has the audience.
That's right.
So I think that it speaks to exactly what you're talking about. Kermit just brings out the best in Fozzie. But how I mean, I know you're a fan of the Muppet movie. What do you think about the El Slizo?
Well, I mean, I love the sequence in the El Slizo Cafe, and it's interesting, that is much closer to burlesque,
Sure.
And I think even on the little easel on stage, I think it even says El Slizo Cuties Burlesque or something like that.
Yeah, because Fozzie's subbing for the dancing girls.
Yeah, you should say the dancing girls.
Right, exactly.
The crowd's getting ugly. I did that backwards. I like to do the punchline and then the straight line.
That's why you're a visionary.
Listen to this episode backwards and it'll all make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. So I mean, like the Muppet Show is vaudeville, but we saw like could be a tribute to British music hall. The El Slizo Cafe is like Muppet burlesque, although the Muppet Show also did some burlesque once in a while. In my Muppet universe, which is admittedly the Muppet universe of someone who was born in 1977, so I'm only 1 year younger than Fozzie Bear himself. The Muppet Show is the Muppets for me. I mean, I love the movies too, especially the first 3. But the Muppet Show is the Bible of the Muppets, and that is reality. And the Muppet movie is like those actors from the Muppet Show have now made a movie. And like the Marx Brothers, the Muppets are they are both the characters and the performers. And then, of course, there are also the performers who are actually Muppeteering these characters. But, Kermit the Frog sort of plays Kermit the Frog in the Muppet movie. And Fozzie Bear plays Fozzie Bear in the Muppet movie. So everything that was in effect on the Muppet Show is informs what happens in the movie. So Fozzie's the vaudeville comic on the Muppet Show. So Kermit on his road trip in the film is going to meet Fozzie at some sleazy little cafe, as a burlesque comic, and that's where he picks up Fozzie. It's beautiful. It's perfect.
No, you're absolutely right. That doesn't explain why Gonzo's a plumber, but
yeah, I mean, I guess.
But you are, in general, you are right. Yeah. What? Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to dig into that. I mean, Gonzo's showbiz role on the Muppet Show. I know Gonzo's not our focus here, but he's a novelty act or a freak act. Someone who does daring stunts and or an Evel Knievel kind of type of performer. And in a way, even though in the Muppet movie he's designated as a plumber, he's a sort of daredevil plumber who
right,
who lets helium balloons carry him away, and
he still gets to do his act, even though it's incorporated into the story.
Yeah.
So that was all of the specific clips I had you watch. Any other thoughts about Fozzie Bear, the Muppet Show in general, before we go?
Well, I just would echo what you said earlier, which is about how beautiful Jim Henson and Frank Oz were together. And I keep saying how beautiful Kermit and Fozzie were. And but it's really just a tribute to those artists, that the characters they created are so real to us that we think of the characters as the artists. There's not a lot of other creators I think that's true of, even Walt Disney. I don't actually talk about Mickey Mouse, in the third person.
No.
But my God, Jim Henson and Frank Oz, they were absolutely a great comedy team, and so much more than that. It's one of the standard pieces of video that we all know and love, like so many of these clips are. But of course, one of the most delightful things is that on-location test footage that they shot for the Muppet movie, where they're talking to cows and stuff.
Yeah.
That seems genuinely spontaneous. And Jim and Frank just out in the world living as these characters. And, it just makes you want to spend hours and hours with them.
Sure. Have you seen a video called An Evening with Jim Henson and Frank Oz?
I don't know.
Which is from a Puppeteers of America festival in 1989.
At some point, I devoured a lot of this kind of content.
Sure.
But I don't know. Maybe I've missed this one.
It's just a long Q&A with the two of them. It's really months before Jim died.
Wow.
I think it's summer of 89, so 10 months or something.
Wow, yeah.
But there's a long sequence where they bring out characters and just mess around. There is a moment in that where Fozzie tries to take his hat off and realizes that his hat is pinned to his head.
Uh-huh.
And he says, looks like my hat is pinned to my head. And Rolf says, "You think that's something? My arm is pinned to my chest." And it's so remarkable to me how they can take these characters and have them refer to their status as puppets and not break the reality at all.
Yeah.
Because you still feel like it's Fozzie and Rolf messing around.
Even more so. It's because they're just that good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not. The reality that they've created is not fragile. It's so sturdy that they can violate it, and it doesn't matter. We still buy in. It's genius. I mean, it's just there's. There are other artists I would say this about, but nobody's ever been better at anything than they were at what they did. And you remind me how great Fozzie and Rolf were as a pair. You're talking about the great Henson and Oz combinations. Just earlier today, I've been watching a lot of Fozzie today. When Fozzie and Rolf do "I've Got Rhythm," that's really
great.
Really great interplay between two characters.
There's another one which is they do English Country Garden. Have you seen that one?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was a UK spot, and that one too I think is just so they're just having so much fun, and then so are we.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Well, I think that just about brings us down. Before we go, Noah, where can our listeners find you and your work?
Well, you can find me at noahdiamond.com. You can find information about all the various plates I'm juggling, the monthly Marx Brothers podcast, and all kinds of other projects, past, present, and upcoming.
Wonderful. Thanks again for joining us, and here is Jared with the credits.
70 Years, 70 Muppets is a Muppet Fan podcast presented by toughpigs.com, hosted by a whole myriad of people and edited by them as well. Produced by Jared Fairclough. The Muppet 70 logo used with permission by the Muppet Studio with thanks to Danny Iglesias, Frank Reif Snyder and Lee Slaughter. Don't forget to follow toughpigs.com on all social media platforms. You can support us by heading to patreon.com/toughpigs or buying a t-shirt at tpublic.com/toughpigs.